Hey Zwifters, I'm Simon Schofield and this is the Zwiftcast, and I'm pleased to say that for the first time in a couple of episodes we've got the full crew here. Nathan, yo dude.
Hey, how's it going, Simon?
And live from Sydney, Australia, Shane Miller, the Llama. G'day, mate.
G'day, Simon. I'm back, and my voice is back as well. So good
yeah,
news.
last time I heard you were croaky of Germany. Let's crack straight on because actually we've got quite a lot to talk about. Where I want to start is I have been contacted personally by lots of people in my club over the past few weeks who have said, please can you show me Zwift? Now, at least some of these people would not have been seen dead anywhere near Zwift this time last year. I think we're seeing a big influx of people who I know Zwift kind of call refuseniks. Shane, does that chime with what's happened in Australia over the winter?
Absolutely, for sure. Look, there's a number of riders who I call the old school who are now on Zwift. Now, these guys will ride in the rain. They will ride fixed bikes or fixed gear bikes. You know, they're the old school boys from 30 years ago who you'd never think would be on an indoor trainer. They're now on Zwift. They're loving it, and they're also leading bunch rides. So it's happened over the winter here. Yep, it's there's a lot of good converts, and they're probably the best people or the best salespeople as well. Because if you know the reluctant are now on, they'll tell everyone about it, and it's been
there's
great.
Nothing quite like the zeal of the convert, is there? I mean, there's one particular guy. I think if he listens to this, he'll know who he is. But all last winter, he was, I'm going to go out and suffer in the cold and the wet. It's what cycling's all about. And he did his first Zwift ride just a few days ago. And the complete road to Damascus conversion in one ride was actually incredible to see. Have you ever seen that, Nathan?
The best example there would have been when we first started live streaming races, and we hooked up with Cycling Hub, and they got a lot of old schoolers actually. Their first comments were, the first time or two were like, what is this? Why are you streaming races? This is silly. And now all of a sudden we're having all these Cycling Hub people coming into the race scene on stream actually and loving it. That relates there big time as far as the convert goes. And then, we were just at a shop this past week putting a Zwift setup in, and there were plenty of people there that were kind of hardcore road racers that kind of laughed at what I was doing for my training last year, and now I've seen the results in my racing, and then I've also been converted full on to like, we're going to do a setup now with our whole team.
There's another category, I think, which I'm probably going to make up a name for. They're something like the curious last year but couldn't be bothered. I think they're coming in too, and obviously iOS is going to help with that, and I had that on my list of things to talk about, but having ridden the beta or beta, I never know quite how that's supposed to be pronounced, so I'll go with both. I'm not sure how much there is to say about it, Shane, really, because it kind of just works.
Well, look, I did the first look of the iOS version up in the snow.
That was one of the most extraordinary videos of yours I've ever seen, but very good.
Yeah, what I wanted to do was, just first of all, see how well it worked. And look, it worked so well that it wasn't, look, don't take this the wrong way, but it wasn't anything special because I was so accustomed to the environment. And so what it did was perfect. It replicated the exact experience that I had. And as you saw in my video, and I did a backstory of the video as well behind the scenes because it was so bizarre to set up, that I raced for that comm and I was racing people on there. I was lost. I wasn't in the snow in -8 or whatever it was up there. I was just riding Zwift. So the way they've actually been able to put this on iOS has been fantastic. So for new people, it will be a lot of wow factor. For the old school, when they find out that it's just the same, I'm wondering, I'm not sure the existing user base will get anything out of it.
Take me as an example. I mean, because I've got a kind of quite a good setup that I've honed over months and years. I'm pretty happy with that. So when I saw iOS, it was like, well, why is that any better for me? And the answer is it's not at all. However, Nathan, for this curious but couldn't be bothered group, it is going to be important, isn't it?
The couldn't be bothered part actually was just dealing with that this past week as well, with that exact setup I was just talking about at the local shop. A guy who is Apple diehard, actually, and as soon as he found out that there was an app for that, he was like, well, why am I doing all this? Here we go. Let's just get it hooked up, And so I think that's it's the plug and play situation, like Shane showed perfectly in his video. Actually, it's just turn it on and download and hook it up and go. So there might be a little bit not bothered with trying to transfer to Bluetooth or ANT and all of that, run around a little bit. But that's a lot easier, I think, than a full-on PC setup if you need to buy a new PC and all the other things that go along with that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, the beta works so well, Shane. I'm kind of wondering why, what's the delay really? And of course, we don't have a date, but most people seem to be projecting a date of somewhere around late November. I don't know whether you know any different, but I suppose there is work under the hood, as they say, that needs to be done.
Yeah, look, dealing with Apple as well. Now, you sort of have to partner, I guess, with Apple if you're going to be putting a paid for or a subscription-based app in there. I think this is new ground for both companies because I believe the app will be a free download, but it's a subscription service. So there's some, I guess, agreements that have to be worked out there between the two. There's also things like on-screen keyboards. There's a few little things to iron out. So it'll be really, really interesting, and I'm sure they'll be able to do it. The biggest hurdle is over. It's on the platform, and it seems to work quite fine. So it's just the 90%'s there, and the hard work is the last probably 10%.
No, it certainly does work extremely well, kind of boringly well in a way, actually. Now, Shane, we hit a bit of a landmark in Australia, which was 3,000 people on the Facebook group. And, of course, you're coming to the end now of your winter season, just as we in the Northern Hemisphere go into it. What's the upsum from Oz this year, this indoor season?
Look, it's been really, really great. The community there, I think I've mentioned before in another Zwiftcast, that we've really upskilled everyone to be able to help everyone else out. If you're having ANT connection problems or dropouts or login problems and things like that, there's a really good community of people who'll help each other out, and you'll get an answer pretty quickly as well. So that's been great. It's been a really good little community there, and we're also seeing people. I haven't seen any sort of fade off. The weather is getting warmer now, but I haven't seen any drop off yet because of all the new events that are coming up. So people aren't getting on there just to train; they're getting on there because of Zwift, because to train. And I think we'll be talking about those very shortly.
Yeah, no, we've got some interesting things to talk about in this cast, including the World Champs, as Shane hinted at there. Right, I think it's time to play a trailer. I don't normally play a trailer, but here's a trailer.
I still feel like we have the best trainer out there. Tax has done a great job of highlighting the fact that they've created false inertia. I would love to do a Pepsi challenge, put on some blinders and ride on that and ride on ours, and I think we'd come away every time the winner.
That was Chip Hawkins, the president of Wahoo, issuing something of a challenge, so I took him up on it. I got a KICKR, the new version, 2016, and a Neo, and I got one Zwifter to try them both and give his opinion on which one he liked the best. And you can hear that later on in the podcast. That's Neo versus KICKR. But what about KICKR versus KICKR? There's a new KICKR out, 2016, and it's promised to be much quieter. So let's have a listen to old KICKR versus new KICKR. These recordings were made in the same room on the same equipment. Decibel readings are a bit immaterial here. It's all about the kind of noise that trainers make. Is it intrusive? Will it disturb the rest of the household or the neighbours? Here's the original KICKR. 150 watts. And here's the new KICKR at the same wattage, 150. Old KICKR, new KICKR. Even at relatively low wattages, the characteristic high-pitched whistling sound of the old KICKR has disappeared. And at higher wattages, where the old KICKR was quite intrusive to some people's ears, the difference is even more marked. This is the two side by side at 300 watts. That was the old KICKR, and here comes the new KICKR. Old KICKR, new KICKR. Wahoo have definitely got rid of the old, irritating, high-pitched screaming noise that used to come from the original KICKR. And if you want to find out how they did that, there's an excellent explanation from the president of the company, Chip Hawkins, on the Eurobike episode of the Zwiftcast. How big a deal do you think, Shane, in the marketing of trainers in this incredibly competitive market that we've got now, how big a deal do you think noise is?
If you were to sort of put three things down, so power meter accuracy, road feel, or actual experience, the third one would be noise for sure, because there's a lot of people now wanting to train in closed apartments. Just on my block alone, there's been 2 houses demolished and 6 units going up. People are living closer and closer together. That's just how things are moving. And it will also, allow people to train at different times of the day as well if you've got kids. So I think noise is right up there. It's definitely a top 3 for me.
Nathan, do you think noise is a big deal for trainer manufacturers to worry about?
I think it definitely is. I think as the market progresses too, as Zwift progresses as a platform, I think it'll become more and more important as well. If you're trying to speak to somebody in an audio third-party software and there's this huge noise in the background and it's totally bugging everybody that's in that audio room, you're going to want a different device. You're going to say, I need to get a different trainer. And so I think that we're going to see more and more interaction on Zwift through audio and trying to create more of a group ride or event situation. And I think they're going to be looking for quieter and quieter trainers on top of not waking up the whole household.
Excellent point. There are rumours around that one of the next big steps for Zwift is going to be audio communication and making that as slick as everything else is on Zwift. And to be honest, that's all I know about that. I'm hoping to get Eric Min, the big boss, on the Zwiftcast, maybe the episode after this one or the one after that. So that'll be on the list of questions to ask him. But you're quite right. The noise thing is not going to go away. Okay, so I spent some time talking to a guy called Peter Maloney, who like, I was going to say many Zwifters, it's not many Zwifters, like some Zwifters, doesn't ride in the game under his real name, but he's got a really good reason for doing that. So let's hear about that. Peter's on the Zwiftcast because he contacted me and he wanted to talk about his experience of cycling with the condition called multiple sclerosis, which many people will have heard of, but perhaps not everybody will fully understand. So Peter, why don't you just give us a little explanation of what the condition is and how it affects you as a cyclist and how long you've been diagnosed?
Multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease where your immune system attacks your central nervous system. We all have this protective sheath around our nerves called myelin, and your immune system, when you have MS, gets confused and thinks that that's a foreign virus and attacks it, and then that impacts the central nervous system signals going from your brain to other parts of your body. So it can result in anything from weakness to pain to, in more severe cases, people have trouble significant mobility issues. In my case, it's been fairly mild, I would say. So I feel really fortunate. I have tremors in my hands and behind my shoulders, especially when I get hot. So when you get hotter, when your body heats up, just like you think of an electrical wire, and if it overheats, the signal doesn't go through. That happens with MS. So when I get hot, my hands get super shaky, like I couldn't, operate my phone or whatever. But most of the time, it's either not there at all or a little bit. I get some dizziness. Like I know when I do Zwift, that FTP test, by the end, I feel really dizzy and I feel some vision issues. So it's like I can't really see straight.
Hey, Peter, you're not alone in feeling dizzy and having vision issues on an FTP test. Do you know other people living with the condition who use Zwift or cycle outside and find it helpful?
Just to exercise, it keeps some of the things that I'm thinking on the fly here, but some of the things that I'm sure it helps with are you can get weakness, like muscle weakness with MS, and I felt that a little bit, and I'm always I always worry about my legs. Like I feel it a lot in my arms, but I don't worry quite as much. But in my legs, I always worry about it. And I think just exercising and keeping those muscles strong has to help.
One of the reasons I wanted to do this interview really is you do identify in your name as having MS, don't you? Just tell me what name you ride under.
The full name is I Ride with MS. Put that on on Zwift and see if I meet anybody else. And actually somebody did contact me. This guy had messaged me, send me a message on Zwift. Oh, you're right. You have MS. My wife has MS. It's great that you're riding or whatever. And I found him, I think, when he posted the ride to Strava and said hello later. But it would be great to meet other people on Zwift with MS. And that's one of the ways I guess I'm trying to do it.
Sure. Well, let's hope the Zwiftcast can do a bit of a job here. So, look out for Peter, and it's Peter Maloney, and he rides under I Ride with MS. And it would be absolutely terrific, I think, if other people who have the condition could reach out to Peter, and it would be great to see and perhaps a small kind of subset of a community on Zwift for people with this condition.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, guys, well, there is not a human being in the civilized world who is going to say that what Peter's doing is wrong. It is absolutely not. And that is a great way of finding people who are in the unusual position of riding a bike pretty hard with MS, and good luck to him. However, there are lots of people who don't use their real names on Zwift for reasons that actually I don't fully understand, and I'd like to explore with you two. So let's start with, why wouldn't you ride under your real name? Because I don't get that. If I go for a group ride with people I don't know, they don't wear masks outside. Do you know what I mean? And if I say, well, who are you? What's your name? They don't say Cake Power. What do you think, Shane? I mean, why wouldn't you use your real name?
Oh, look, I reckon there's a whole PhD to do on this. But look, two things I can think of is it's a disassociation with the real world. Some people, they just want to be somebody else. And yeah, it's sort of that freedom of anonymity. So they're the two things there. So I think it's not for me. We've used aliases for years and years back in the day. But now I've sort of come around and I'm a bit more, I guess, sensible and use my own name.
Nathan, you've actually probably got more experience of this, given your kind of gaming background. I mean, what are the reasons? Can you build on any reasons that Shane's just outlined there?
So in the gaming world, you name a character, you walk in, or you name your alias as, this is my identity. You create some sort of an avatar that it represents you and what kind of, brand you want to name yourself, in the game, however it might be. I don't think that really exists right now on Zwift too much. I think there's anonymity. I think that there's maybe a little bit of security there, but then also that you're exposing yourself. Here's my power, here's my heart rate. If you connect your Strava profile, here's the area I live in. There's a whole lot of, I think, just anonymity that people like to have around they're riding in game and doing a physical activity in game that's represented in there with their avatar, and having some privacy around that is important to some people, I think.
I mean, is it a problem for you race commentating? Because, I know certainly at the top end, you will check out people. I was listening to the stream the other day, and amazingly, a Belgian ex-pro came on who nobody had heard of, but because the guy was riding under his real name, within, seconds, he'd been found on Wikipedia, and it was like, yeah, God, this guy's legit. He was still racing in Belgium 8 years ago. But I'm just looking at a screenshot now. Butternuts, fat bloke, Sonic the Hedgehog, too much cake. I mean, what the actual... And don't get me started on vegans and triathletes.
So there's actually now, I'm going to go back just a little bit and say that a couple of those riders have built a personality around those names, actually, though. Sonic the Hedgehog, the Snail has, Cake Man has as well, the Cake Power Man. I mean, we reference these people during the streams because they're well-known racers in amongst the race community. But
but I mean, I've seen Cake Power, Nathan. But do you know who Cake Power is in real life? Because he's racing as an A. So don't we need, we're not entitled to know. Of course, we're not entitled to know, but it's nice to know. So you know who he is in real life.
Yeah, I think, and he had James Hodges has no problem with all of us knowing whatsoever, and he's called out all the time in stream. He's actually the main man behind developing Zwiftpower.com. So huge shout out to him in that. And it's a little bit of a joke. The name has changed multiple times too, from Cake Power to the cake is a lie to the cork is a lie to when he was doing different tests on different power meters, he'd call the different power meters a lie. It was so he's having lots of fun with it. But on the verification issue, yes, that is something that gets a little bit frustrating when not only is their name different, but then their Strava name as well is hidden. Their profile is hidden, and it's some other name that's a random name too. And then you're starting to ask questions. But at the same time, I think that the community is doing a good job to start to develop a group. If you go on Zwiftpower.com, a few of the top A's now, Dave Allenby being one of them, one of the guys who's winning a lot right now and is a very good time trialist over in Great Britain, has a little Zada approval right next to his name now. And so there's a group that could actually, if you submit files to them that are looking at the background files and seeing how official your results actually are, and you can share that stuff with those people behind the scenes and not be public about it. So there are ways to work with that if people want to keep things private. And I really don't have a problem with that as long as they're willing to go through, if you're going to be in a race environment and putting yourself out there publicly to say, I can produce these results, well, then there is a little bit of a buy-in by saying, well, at least submit that you are able to produce these results.
Am I just being a miserable Brit about this? And I have to say, one of my favourites is a guy called Ross Australia.
No, look, I like to know who I'm writing with as well. One pet peeve of mine is that people have too many brackets and definitions after their name. I got a thumbs up the other day from somebody who had, I think, 5 sets of brackets and definition after their name. I wanted to get a thumbs up from Pete Smith, not Pete Smith, bracket, bracket, bracket. It was like a mathematical formula who'd given me a thumbs up. So I thanks, and I returned it. But,
was the word vegan contained within any of those brackets?
No, it wasn't. That was no. Vegan wasn't on there. But look, two of the ones I have to mention is Get to the Chopper, one of the Arnie calls from one of his movies, and I think one of his friends there, Bath Salts. That has to be the number one name. Now, the story behind Bath Salts was originally it was I'm on Bath Salts, as in a hallucinogenic drug or something like that. And I think he got on there with that name and used I'm on Bath Salts for so long, and he thought, I better tame this down. And he was doing a lot of the Lawrence 10 Dam rides, so it's now just Bath Salts. And again, great guy. So shout outs to Bath Salts if he's listening.
Those two are actually brothers, just so you know. The two that you just named, the Choppa and Bath Salts like lives in my channel, and Choppa is his brother, and I've gotten to know them very well. I have no idea who they are in real life. I don't know their real names in any way whatsoever, but they are definitely a well-known entity within Zwift, or entities in Zwift.
How's that? The Zwift community bringing people with strange names together all over the world. Fantastic. I
think we'll probably return to this in future Zwiftcasts. There's obviously some fertile territory here. Maybe people will be using false names, but I suspect people are going to be using real names when they enter the Zwift World Championships, which is being run by the KISS guys and takes place in around about 10 days' time, middle of October. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic event, and I caught up with one of the organisers, Glenn Knight. Welcome to the Zwiftcast to Glenn Knight, one of the architects of the crazily successful KISS series of races. And he's looking to build on that crazy success with massive ambition, because an incredibly exciting event has just been announced, which is the Zwift World Championships. Tell us more, Glenn.
It's TAX World Championship being organised by the KISS team in conjunction with Zwift themselves.
The TAX bit, I know, is incredibly exciting because there's a very tasty prize on offer. But just tell us about the structure of the event.
The idea is that we're going to get people basically getting on and racing for their nation, trying to get as many riders from each nation to get in, get racing, and basically push as fast as they can, become the winning nation of the World Championship.
I see. So if let's say 60 guys turn up from San Salvador, I doubt they will, but you never know, they might do. They'll race individually, and you will work out the average time of all of those 60 guys that complete the course.
Correct.
And I was pretty sexist there because I said, guys, in fact, this is a totally egalitarian event in terms of gender, isn't it?
Well, there's two events. So on the 15th, it's a women-only event, and on the 16th, it's a men-only event, and the prize draws are per event. So there is a prize draw for the female event on the Saturday, and then a separate prize draw and prizes for the men's event on the Sunday.
Okay, and the prizes, as I alluded to earlier, are tasty. They are a Tax Neo, are they not?
Up for grabs is one of the top-of-the-range Tax Neo Smart Trainers. This is one per competition, so one for the male competition and one for the female competition. Because of the issues with verification, etc., it's going to be a randomly drawn prize over all finishers for that particular gender competition, open to all participants.
Yeah, well, that seems a very fair way to do it, because my next question was going to be, how the hell are you going to sort out the inevitable temptation that people might have to be a little fast and loose with the truth on that?
And that's really why we've gone down this road of doing it as a random draw. We'll follow the usual KISS rules in terms of power verifications, certain requirements over a certain wattage, all the things that people are familiar with KISS races, to and try and sort of help people who are quite clearly pushing past their boundaries, if you like.
Yes. Well put, Glenn. Very delicately put. Now, what kind of course are we going to be looking at? I'm guessing fairly flat?
We've got Watopia on both of those days, on the 15th and the 16th. We'll be using the flat course, five laps for men, 4 laps for women.
But of course, you can't stop people racing together and forming ad hoc teams. I'm guessing that is likely to happen.
I think so. I think we'll see people like Team X getting involved there with their multinational team in there. ODZ will no doubt do the same. But I think the key here is it's about becoming the winning nation.
You've got some pretty meaty support, though, haven't you? The support of both Tax and Zwift, obviously highly officially sanctioned. That kind of support must be useful and gratifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome, isn't it? To think that 12 months on, we're in this position where it's a real opportunity for us, and it's a real opportunity for the community as a whole to show these big sponsors where we've got to.
Yeah, well, it sounds like an incredibly exciting event. So come on, let's speculate about who may win. I mean, clearly we're going to see a big showing from the UK. We're going to see obviously a large showing from the States. I would imagine the Australians will still be inside, maybe.
The Australians, I think, are the ones to watch. I think they'll just be coming to the end of their indoor season. They've got some pretty big hitters, but then don't underestimate the French, I don't think.
Oh, really? And of course, I think that, we could see a strong showing from the Low Countries as well. I would imagine there'll be a few Belgians in there.
I would imagine so, yeah. Coming to the end of their race season, I think it's going to be all out. I think there's going to be some real contenders out there. But I think the Australians are going to be the ones to beat.
Yeah, well, the problem with Australians is if you show them a sporting contest, they've got this nasty habit of always wanting to win it.
Yeah, I think we've got some Brits just like that, so don't you worry.
Well, the thing is, the Australians are still smarting from the Olympics, so,
Yeah.
Well, listen, it sounds like a really, really exciting event, and it may well be. I think that the podcast will touch upon it once or twice before it happens, and we will certainly cover it, maybe even during, and certainly shortly afterwards. Congratulations to the KISS guys. This is certainly a marquee event. I really look forward to seeing it take place, and thanks for organising it, Glenn.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. We're really looking forward to it. There's going to be more announcements coming up over the coming weeks, and then registration will start via the event module a week before the event itself.
Okay, boys. Well, this is really straightforward, isn't it? Who's going to win? Obviously, I would say the Brits, are going to be starting this one as clear favourites. Shane?
Oh, look, without a doubt, the Aussies. Look, we're coming off the end of the season. Everyone's prepared. We've been racing on Zwift for the last 6 months, flat out. We're there in numbers. We have the biggest group rides. That's no question about that. So Aussies have it in the bag.
Nathan, I'm worried about the Canadians. They seem to me to be incredibly competitive. Canadians. Am I guilty of appalling national stereotyping?
I don't know. I mean, the Canadians have a few big hitters for sure, but I would almost have to agree with you that the Brits are going to have a pretty good showing. Actually, I kind of need to do something about my USA contingent over here because we need to get quite a few more involved in the Zwift world, I think, at the top end of the racing. Frank Garcia is definitely one to watch out for, and he might be getting a group, though, around him. You know, he's got that Team Experimental that he runs, and they're always at the front end of the races. I have a feeling they might be planning something. Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to see how it turns out. I think either way, I think the TACX Neos that are up for grabs are going to have the numbers just skyrocketing no matter what level they're at. And I don't think anybody's going to be really thinking about who's going to win the race itself then as to whether or not they're entering the race. I think they're going to enter the race and get it done to get in on those Neos.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, they are great prizes. And clearly TACX have got behind this, and I know Zwift have got behind it. Is this a sign of things to come this winter, Shane, this Northern Hemisphere winter, Shane, that, the brands are going to be in there competing to offer, like, really tasty prizes?
Look, I really hope so. It's really, really good to see companies leveraging off the platform. Zwift have created the world, so sort of if you build it, they will come style, and it's really, really working. So it's great to see companies behind this and training groups as well. I'm sure there's a few training groups. I could probably 3 or 4 in Australia, training groups and coaches who are using the platform. I'm sure there's more throughout the world who'll encourage their riders to get on board and participate, and that just snowballs from there. So look, this is fantastic. I can't wait to see. This is, again, it's still first generation of these events, and as they become more and more refined, the sky's the limit for this stuff.
That's going to be one to watch, and one that we will be recapping in results terms on the next podcast. And I'm very interested to hear you playing down the Americans, Nathan. I think this might be tactics myself. Okay, next, let's return to trainers, which is a very popular subject with Zwifters, with so much competition and so many trainers out on the market. The Facebook groups are kind of alive with people saying, should I do this? Should I get that? What's the reviews like on this? So I decided to take Chip up on his challenge and test the new Wahoo KICKR against the Neo. I got a friend in to do it, an experienced crit racer, time trialist and Ironman finisher in real life, and of course, an experienced Zwifter. So welcome to the podcast to a clubmate of mine, a guy by the name of Anthony Henson, and Anthony's going to be riding 2 of the top-end trainers today, and the brief for him is to talk about the Chip Challenge, which basically boils down to which trainer provides the best road feel. So hello, Anthony.
Hello, Simon.
And let's just start by you telling us what type of cyclist you are and what type of Zwifter you are.
I'm very much a club cyclist. I'm an ex-rugby player, so I'm on the larger side at 6'5" and over 200 pounds. Zwift-wise, I wasn't the earliest adopter, but I got in fairly quickly, obviously mainly via you, to be honest. And I've got a Vortex, which I think most of the Zwift riders have, and I found it to be excellent. I'm not sure how today's going to go, because obviously riding these top-end trainers, I think is going to be a bit of a difference from the Vortex. And much in the same way as I've never test driven a BMW M3 because it might cost me a lot of money. Today might end up quite expensive.
Yeah, when Anthony and I were talking about this beforehand, we did weigh up the dangers of this endeavour. So I'm going to let Ant have 5, 10, maybe even 15 minutes on this first trainer, and then we'll come back to him and see what he thinks. Okay, so Ant's just come up one of the small risers in the London course. How did you find that little hill compared to your Vortex, Ant?
Similar, because I think the steepness probably doesn't push the Vortex. I think the steeper hills might be more telling, but it was certainly a lot smoother, I think, the transition into the hill.
So here's Anthony going for a sprint, and he's got a very respectable 5th out of 35. Not bad effort. Well done, Ant. Box Hill is not far away, so we'll talk to Anthony again when he's had a bit of time on Box Hill. Anthony's just come out of the underground station and he's about to start Box Hill. He's now hooked up with a group and the group is cracking on at a pretty good pace. How's it going, Ant?
Yeah, really well. I mean, as far as the training goes, I think fair to say the downhills are the biggest difference from the Vortex, I think. But overall, yeah, really impressed with the sort of swift transition between slopes. I've ridden up this in the Ride London a few years ago. Actually, it's the only time I've ridden up Box Hill for real. Coming from Yorkshire, it was a slight disappointment, but I'm sure it's going to hurt me today.
So Anthony's making good progress on Box Hill. I'm going to ask him to back off in a couple of minutes. I'm going to allow him to cool down, get a bit of breath back, and then we'll get his overall impressions of this first trainer. How did you find that trainer? And I want you to think really particularly about how it feels compared to riding a bike on the road.
Yeah, I haven't quite got my breath back, but getting there. In terms of closeness to ride on the road, I would say it's very, very close. As I said, I've ridden the Ride London in real life. Unsurprisingly, going up Box Hill is a very similar experience on Zwift on this trainer as it is in real life in terms of effort. I think downhill is noticeably a lot different to my Vortex, and it's just so slick in terms of changing gradients. The downhill feel, I think it gave me my correct advantage of weight going downhill. Thankfully, I found that a lot easier to keep up with a group ride on that. But overall, really impressed. Very slick.
So we've now got Anthony set up on the second trainer. Anthony, you've only been on it a minute or two. Immediate impressions?
Immediate impressions, I think this sort of shades the first trainer, I think, in terms of even just setting off sort of freewheel on it. Obviously we're only on the flat at the moment, not tried any hills or downhills yet, but yeah, so far so good.
So Anthony's on the London course again on this second trainer, and he's just now on the first climb, not really a climb, just a little lump on the London course, but the resistance has obviously changed. How did you find that change, Anthony?
Again, very, very smooth.
These two trainers use very different methods to place inertia. Can you actually detect the difference between them?
Definitely. It's noticeably different on this second trainer, definitely.
And what sort of words would you use to describe the difference?
It's difficult to say. I think it almost feels like it holds too much inertia going uphill slightly, but it is smoother. I felt the other trainer was a little bit more jerky in terms of even on the flat, pedal stroke to pedal stroke, you could feel the slightly different inertia. It's a slightly jerkier feel to it.
So Ant's going for a sprint on the second trainer now. Well, tantalisingly, he was 1 watt away from 1,000 watts. In road field terms, and I can see you're breathing fairly hard, so I'll keep this short. How did that feel?
Yeah, really realistic, I'd say. Very realistic. Both of them, to be honest, on the sprint, you get a lot more bang for your buck than I do on my Vortex.
Well, that's the test complete, and I think as listeners will almost certainly have guessed by now, or at least a large proportion of listeners, the first trainer was a KICKR and the second trainer was a Neo.
Both of them, it's obviously well documented already, they both are very, very slick. That's my first experience of either one of those trainers. The only smart trainer I've used before is my Vortex. For me, the Neo edges it. I think with the KICKR, it just felt like a bit more inertia per pedal stroke, whereas the Neo was a lot smoother. So overall, for me, I'd say it was the Neo. In terms of comparison to my Vortex, there's no doubt, it's night and day. These two are much, much better units. I don't think, obviously having 3 children, that having ridden today, it's tempted me to have that awkward conversation with the wife about coming up with $1,000 to spend on one of these units. I don't think the difference is enough. If I was to come into some money, then I'd say the Neo would be very high up my wish list, to say the least. I mean, I guess the difference for me is, the Neo is I made the comparison before, it's probably a BMW M3, whereas the Vortex is a BMW 318. The 318 is still a very, very nice car and a nice drive, but I don't think, for me, the price difference would tempt me to move up to the Neo, unless I was to come into some money, as I said.
You used some interesting words when we were just chatting as you were riding about how you'd characterise the difference in the road feel between the two trainers. Just tell us a little bit, if you can, and it's difficult to describe this stuff, but just tell us how each trainer felt respectively and how you feel that compares to real life.
I think the biggest difference for me, was on the KICKR. As I said, there was that slight awareness of each pedal stroke, even when you're on the flat, where on the bike, on the road, you'd expect that to be very, very smooth. You wouldn't feel that inertia per pedal stroke. And when you started the uphill, when the resistance kicked in on the KICKR, the way I described it, I think, was it felt slightly crunchy through the pedals, which sort of just pulled you out of that suspension of disbelief slightly, which it just made you more aware you were on the trainer when that kicked in. And even with headphones in, you'd feel that through the pedals. But yeah, definitely the Neo was a lot smoother in the pedal stroke, and holding, from doing time trials and things on the flat, it felt a lot more realistic in terms of holding the inertia and not feeling it in each pedal stroke.
So that was very useful. I'm sure people will have enjoyed listening to it. Thank you very much, Ant.
Thank you, Simon.
Okay, guys. Well, there's a couple of interesting takeouts from that for me. One, my friend Anthony seems to think, or did think actually, and he didn't have that long on the trainers, but he didn't immediately say, I'm putting my Vortex on eBay and, selling one of the children to buy a Neo or a KICKR. Now, I actually think that's quite interesting, Shane, that the high-end trainers didn't have an immediate kind of appeal that meant that he would, do anything to get one.
Look, I think the big difference is, for most people, it's that automatic resistance change. So that's the biggest, I guess, difference or differentiator of the experience going to a smart trainer. So it's really of no surprise to me that someone who has a smart trainer has jumped on another smart trainer and hasn't really had that wow factor, because the wow factor's already been there. So it was very interesting, and there's a few subtle differences with the trainers, and I don't think the test was long enough. For me, I'll give it a few months.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. He experienced those two trainers, but not really for very long. Nathan, I think there's also a bit of a psychological thing here. I'm sure as cyclists you will recognise this. I certainly go through this process. And that is, when you see something that you want, you pretend that you haven't made the decision to already buy it. But in fact you have, and actually you spend a week or so, or 2 weeks or so, almost persuading yourself, but you knew at the start of the process you were going to get it anyway, and you go through this kind of ridiculous justification procedure. Zip wheels. I'm saying no more. Anyway, and I think there's a similar process going on with the trainer. I think you need to be psychologically ready to spend that amount of money.
From my point of view, I'm kind of the opposite way. I have to convince myself not to get the best thing right off the bat. I'm a quality right up front. If I'm going to get something, I'm going to get the best thing. It's going to last me a really long time. And in this arena, it's an investment, in a whole lot of hours that you're going to be putting in on a trainer. And right up front, I would want to go with what's most accurate, what I'm going to get the best training out of. I would want to go with what the best experience is going to be. And so, the setup was really important for me right from the get-go. And so, having that really ready to go for me was really important. And you'd have to convince me otherwise, I think, not to get a premium setup for Zwift right up front.
buy it right or buy it twice, and buy it right generally means that you've got to spend a little bit more. But the point is, the Vortex remains, an excellent trainer. And actually, we talk about it as cheap. I mean, it's not cheap. It really isn't cheap. It's entry level into the smart trainer world. The other takeout from this one, Shane, and again, he didn't have like a whole load of time on them, but he definitely preferred the Neo. So come on, speak up for the KICKR. And did I see you are currently in possession of 4 KICKRs?
Oh, look, yes, I can confirm we do own 4 KICKRs.
Why?
Now let me justify that, because in my YouTube channel comments, I've had to justify it as well. Look, I'm still on 10 speed. My wife Veronica's on 11 speed, and I haven't fixed my 10 speed yet. So there's 2. The next one, I couldn't refuse to buy it. It was selling so cheap, I had to buy it. And then that happened again on the weekend. Somebody was selling one at below the price of a KICKR Snap, a brand new one. It had 200 Ks on it. I couldn't not buy it. So I've got sort of 2 that I don't use. But in having 2 that I don't use, I'm sort of doing a bit of a commercial community service, I guess. I'm hiring them out.
Okay.
So if people want to actually try KICKR or try a smart trainer for the first time, rather than having that investment, they actually get a chance to ride them for a week or 2, and I give them the ant stick and whatever else they need to get set up on, and it's a bit of an entry level for them. So I've got 4 KICKRs and 1 Neo.
I have to say that's a very convincing explanation. So
well, that's what I tell myself.
I know you're a great champion of the KICKR. I mean, and you do prefer it to the Neo, don't you?
Look, I'm probably 55-45 towards the KICKR. Now, the reason for that is the weight of that flywheel, and I believe Anthony did discuss the inertia during the tests. And for me, I like high inertia trainers. It feels like I'm out on the road or on the track on top of the gear. And with that flywheel, if you throw in a really quick acceleration from a slow, so like a hill sprint, it takes a long time to get that weight moving. And that for me feels more like outside. The Neo feels a little empty. Look, it's really, really close. As I said, I'm 55% towards the KICKR, 45 for the Neo. And I asked Veronica this question, my wife, this question yesterday. If I was to say, look, you've got to ride the Neo for a month, would you be okay with that? And she said, yeah, that's fine. So they're really, really close, but I do like having that heavily weighted flywheel.
The very nice people at Elite have just sent me a Drivo to test, or Drivo, who knows? Anyway,
I think it's actually Drivo. I believe it's Drivo.
Well, anyway, it looks like a really nice trainer, and I'm going to be testing that against probably the Neo and the KICKR. That's probably going to come on the next episode of the podcast. Actually, on this subject, I also talked to a guy who I think has almost had more trainers than hot dinners. Clearly that can't be literally true, but Colin Pearman has owned an awful lot of trainers. So I got him to take us through his trainer history and then talk to us about the decision that he made to do what Nathan was probably recommending, which was to get the best that you can afford. Hi, Colin.
Hi, Simon.
So let's talk a little bit about your trainer journey.
My sort of trainer journey started in 2003 with some kind of Tax magnetic. And I think by the time I finished with it, I'd worn about a 1 centimetre deep track in the steel barrel. The feeling of a magnetic trainer isn't a great feeling. Even though you can adjust resistance, it's a very kind of stop pedaling, the wheel stops. There was no inertia. So my next trainer was a Cyclops fluid. So I kind of played around with the Cyclops fluid for a while. And then about early 2006, I think in America, the Inside Ride rollers came onto the market. So I did pull the pin on one of those inside rides. A bit more interest, bit of occupying your brain and your skills rather than just staring blindly at the wall.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people who ride rollers do say that.
I think I only managed to fall off it once, but that was probably ill-advised riding at 2 o'clock in the morning after having a few too many shandies, shall we say.
That sounds a particularly ill-advised adventure.
It was ill-advised. I've got a scar on my back from my kitchen work surface to this day. Then I took a bit of a break from cycling, and I came back and I purchased a Cyclops Super Magneto Pro, which, again, a very nice ride for a trainer, actually. And that's kind of, it uses magnets that move in and out from the drum to kind of give a very realistic road feel. So I happily used that for probably through till now, with a little spell at the beginning of this year when I purchased a Cyclops silencer, which is my first direct drive unit.
You love your trainers, don't you?
I do love my trainer. To be fair, I try probably ride my bike most days, and majority of my riding is done indoors these days. So I had a couple of those silencers, but they kept getting the same fault, where it seemed to make a couple of 50p pieces in the washing machine noise. And in the meantime, I'd been playing with Zwift since about November 2015.
Zwift was the cue for Colin to invest further in trainers, and he went for the top end and bought a Tacx Neo, not before he'd spent a lot of time thinking about it, though. I guess the question I'd really like to hear answered by you is, do you feel paying these very large sums of money, even if you get a little bit of discount, for the top-of-the-range smart trainers, do you think that is absolutely worth it?
I was a bit apprehensive. I unpacked it, I think, on the hottest day of the autumn, when it was like super hot down in this part of the country, in London anyway. And I set it up, and within about 3 minutes, got off, and I was effing and blinding about what an experience that was. How different that is to riding a normal turbo. It felt like riding outside.
Really? I mean, it literally was a kind of moment of revelation, even for somebody who's had as many trainers as you have.
Oh yeah, it was completely different. Just the gradient changes and, the downhills, uphills. My legs felt different after an hour with those enforced changes of cadence and effort required compared to a normal hour's turboing.
You can understand why people just look at you in horror when you talk about £1,000 turbo trainers. You think it's worth it, though?
I think it's, for me personally, absolutely, because I'm 47 now. I've been turboing for 2003, 15, 16 years. I actually had a good chat with myself earlier in the year, saying I didn't become a cyclist when I was 15 to stare at a brick wall in my shed. And that kind of, through circumstance and kind of, actually, I like turboing, if I was really honest. Seems to end up my cycling journey, sitting on the turbo looking at a square piece of breeze block. Seems to happen to be my journey. So for me, it's kind of kept me in the game of cycling. I think smart trainers and Zwift have kind of prolonged me being, I use the word cyclist loosely, peddler. For me, it's personally worth it. Everyone has different circumstances, or even kind of feeling. It is an expensive trainer. I mean, there are some great trainers out there for probably half the price, without some of the sort of fancy features. There don't seem to be very many demonstration units out on the streets. Tacx Neo, you kind of, or the KICKR, or even probably the Flux, and any of the what I call that high end grouping. I don't want to get into brands particularly. There's no way you can go and try it. Kind of, if your friend's got one, then you're lucky. Most people sort of tend to trust reviews, but there's always what works for you is never necessarily going to work for somebody else. And I think perhaps they need, to convince more customers that perhaps they would need to have some demonstration shops, in each locality. I think they probably would sell more, but perhaps Tacx are selling out every month from their production run anyway, so selling any more.
Well, I mean, it's an excellent point, a very good point. I mean, I think, well, certainly in the UK, retail space is so expensive that to devote, a fair chunk of retail space to one item, because you don't just need the trainer, you need the bike, you need the screen, you need the PC, you need the full banana experience. You can see some local bike shops just kind of not liking that, because I still think 70% of the customers would come in and say, how much? But yeah, it's really, really interesting to see how this is going to go. Colin, it's been completely fascinating talking to you, particularly someone with such a long career and such a wide experience of so many different turbos. And isn't it funny that we can entertain each other and hopefully a few other people talking about different types of turbo trainer? It's a funny old world, hey?
It is a funny old world. Thank you, Simon.
Thanks for your time.
Have a good day.
So, guys, there we are. Another podcast comes to an end. Lots and lots of topics covered, apart from one which I'd forgotten, actually, Nathan, and we should explore, and that is the controlled race starts fiasco. Now, I'm being a bit harsh there, actually. It didn't achieve what it wanted to achieve, I don't think. So for people who didn't catch this, Zwift have introduced, this is an official part of the game, Zwift have introduced a system where for the first 3 kilometers of a race, if you go over 200 watts, the response that you get above that 200 watts is reduced. I don't think it's entirely cancelled out. I think it's reduced. But and the idea, I think, was to stop these manic sprint starts where you're just, for the first 2 minutes, you are going at absolutely full gas. These kind of sprint starts. That was the idea was to try to introduce a sense of neutralisation, but it didn't really work, did it, Nathan?
No, and I think the diminishing returns approach is probably why, because what ended up happening is that those who could just get up to 200 watts then got capped there, but there's a few individuals that could do 600, 700, 800 watts that were able to just walk away from everybody, almost even more so than before, because everybody else was kind of capped at that 200 if that's all they could really do. And so it kind of just ended up the same way that it usually did with this situation. But I think that it was a good experiment with how to implement this into the game. That's what the idea was with KISS Labs, these KISS laboratory races where we're trying out new things in the game. And I think it's a good idea for wanting to get that kind of race start. I was very vocal about my opinion on this.
For those who didn't hear that very vocal opinion, just summarise it for us, will you? The summary I'm going to attribute to you was stop whining and get faster.
Well, Nathan's a mountain biker, so that's how they all start anyway, isn't it? Flat out. Yeah, flat out. Who's getting there first? But the what I'm hearing, the only argument I've heard is these people are faster than me. I don't like it. That's really, there isn't really any way that the argument I've heard over and over and over again can be packaged up that way. And so I do understand a couple of other arguments that are out there that there's A, B, C, and D racers that we need to separate. No, that's a separate argument. In some sort of that's categories. I mean, let's not get into that here because that just gets so complicated. I'd like to try and keep this to starts. And I think you're absolutely right. There is an awful lot of I'm being beaten and I don't like it. Shane, what do you think the idealised Zwift race start would be? I have to say, as I'm old and fat, I do like a neutralised start because it allows me to wind up to, some kind of respectable speed. And I've always liked the idea of a virtual commissaire's car or a virtual Derny bike that is gradually increasing speed. Forget wattage because, a 50 kilogram guy versus a 90 kilogram guy, which you see a lot in Zwift racing, is just makes wattage a bit of a nonsense as a metric for neutralising. But what do you think, Shane, would be the ideal start? Look, I'm on the same lines as you there, Simon. I'm a traditional roadie, so I'd love to see the red car driving along with Prudhomme out the top, waving the flag Tour de France style, and the flag gets pulled in. I don't think we'll ever see cars on Zwift, and it would be very hard to implement any other sort of vehicle. Derny bike? No, I don't think anything with a motor or anything like that, because then you'll sort of introduce an e-bike and somebody will want to unlock it and ride it around. But look, maybe even just a glowing... you know how you go through the arch after you finish an interval? Maybe a glowing line that everyone sort of lines up to, and that line will move along and maybe changes color from green through to red just before it starts, or sorry, red through to and then green as it starts. Just sort of think of harness racing for horses, and they sort of, the gates are down and they sort of put their nose up against the gates lift up and away you go. Or that is behind a ute or a car as well. But just some sort of virtual swimming line. I guess if you want to visualize it, is swimming in the Olympic You see the world record line just move away and away they go. Maybe something like that, but I do like the fact that they are trying things. There are experiments in what works and what doesn't, because what we'll stumble across here is a solution somebody may have not thought of yet that works really well. So who knows what's going to come up.
I like that idea, Nathan, don't you?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, anything that involves a more gamified graphics experience coming into the game, I definitely enjoy. And I think I hadn't thought of that one for sure with the workout mode, bringing that feature over with the arches. That's a really cool, very cool idea.
You've sold it, Shane. Just go away and make that work, will you?
I'll patent that one, no worries. I'll sit back and on my yacht and watch everyone race with that.
It'll have a little llama right on the top of it. That'll be the little llama icon.
That's all I ask.
A moving llama line. I hope you're listening, Zwift. Okay, guys, that's been very enjoyable and useful. I hope people have enjoyed listening to that as much as I have taking part in it. Nathan, what news from your part of the forest? Any new stuff you can tell us about just before we go?
Yeah, definitely. Over on Beam, we just got partnered with Beam today. It was my birthday today, and they gave me the partnership button, sub button. So that's
what does that
really
mean?
cool.
What does that mean? Partnership?
So now you can put a ride-on thumbs in the channel. We're getting emoticons, is essentially. I mean, we're getting emotes in channel for people who subscribe to the channel. Subscribers get a whole bunch of different benefits as well when you're in the channel. So essentially, you can subscribe to the channel in order to support it. And then Beam is also then partnering with me in a two-way street to grow the stream and grow Beam together. So as a partner, we're working together to grow live streaming.
And I think we are going to try to get me to do a bit of colour commentary on some Beam stuff when we can work out some of the technical hassles which plagued us last time we tried it, which may not have been unrelated to the fact that several club mates had been round at my house the day before, and the exchange that I offered for teaching them everything I know about Zwift was that they bring beer with them. But they brought IPA, and that stuff's so strong. It's like wine, isn't it? Anyway, I wasn't at my best that the following evening, it has to be said. Shane, what's new with you?
Oh, look, the sun's started to come out now here in Australia, so there's a bit of riding to be done. So we're heading outdoors and using all the fitness we've gained indoors to start racing. Daylight savings is now kicked in, so the criterium season is in full swing in Melbourne. So there's 5 or 6 criteriums a week that people can choose to do, and there's just a lot of riding going on. On a personal level, the YouTube channel is going great guns. I've stopped the daily. That was just unbelievably time-consuming doing a daily.
Treadmill, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Look, that was probably 6 to 7 to 8 hours a day, plus the tail of follow-up, because I interact quite a lot with everyone, answering questions and providing value where I can. That was just massive. So look, I've chopped that back and just reassessed the where that's heading. I'm going to more towards the just the helpful evergreen tips as well. The other day I did a how to do a basic maintenance on the Wahoo KICKR, which is taking off the flywheel, making sure everything is nice and greased and in good service condition, I guess, and cleaning the optical sensors. So things like that. So I think I'll head towards that for the channel. So yeah, head over and subscribe to the GP Llama channel. There's always something interesting going on. And Veronica and I rode up to the snow the other day. There's still snow in Australia and it's almost summer. Who would have thought?
Well, listen, just remind people where they can find the YouTube channel, what to search for on YouTube, because I have actually shared a number of your videos, because there are some of them, I don't mean to diminish the ones that aren't, but there are some of them that are just incredibly useful.
Well, look, if you make enough of them, yeah, some of them will actually hit the mark. So that's what I've done.
Where do we?
Look, if you just search
where do we find you?
I hide in plain sight. I'm absolutely everywhere. If you search GP Llama, so GPLAMA, that should come up with me, or Shane Miller with an ER, the American spelling of Miller. You should be able to find me. If not, feel free to send me a message via any of the Facebook groups, and I'll point you in the right direction.
Well, I would urge people to look at that channel, because there is some genuinely great stuff there. Guys, it's been fantastic to talk to both of you. Lively edition of the podcast. Look forward to the next one. Look forward to seeing you out on course. Thanks very much indeed. See you soon.
Thanks, Cheers. Simon. Thanks, Nathan.
That's it, podcast fans. Thanks as ever to Zwift. Their support helps keep the podcast on air. but that support does not influence anything Shane, myself, or Nathan say during the podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next time.